In this set of video tutorials, we're going to build the structure for a simple commercial building. This building is going to be like this. It's basically a 50 foot by 50 foot. These dimensions say 47 and 45:1 because they're to the inside walls and not to the exterior walls, but it's basically going to be 50 foot by 50 foot. And it's going to have a conference center in the middle and a series of offices around the sides and a reception in the front eventually. But what we're going to do is do the structure. And this particular building, we're going to build load bearing. That means it's going to be a load bearing wall. We're going to use CMU, concrete masonry units. Uh, and the exterior walls here are going to be concrete masonry units. And then there's going to be a series of trusses, joists, uh, that are going to span the 50 feet across the space, and so we can have a free interior. So let's get started. And the first thing we're going to do in this first video is just kind of go over the site, uh, make you aware of what the file when you open it is going to look like. There's a file on Blackboard. You just need to download that. It's a Revit file that says A03 Simple Office Building Start. And so you'll download that and it should have all of these forms in it. And you'll see right here there's basically here's the street and parking, handicap parking, some landscaped areas. The building's going to go right here. This is the building line, so these are the edge or boundaries of the building line. And then there's some an alley that's accessible and the parking in the back for employees. So that's the basic site. If we look over here in our properties, we'll see a whole series of plans. Right now, let's just go into the south elevation so we can look at what levels we have here. So we have a roof level uh, and a finished floor level, and that finished floor level is 1 foot above the curve because code requires that the finished floor be at least 1 foot above the curve. And then you'll see a street level, and those are the levels, of course, I used to build the site that we have here. If we go back to the site, um, there's a couple of sections, site sections. If we look at those site sections, there's really not much, whole lot to see right now. If we shade that, we can kind of see the boundary of the site right here, and we can see. So this will develop, of course, as we build. And then we can close that. And the transverse section is, of course, just this section right here, cut across the middle. Um, that's kind of generally all you need to know at this point about the site, about what elements are there. What we're going to do, the first thing is show you kind of how I modeled these curbs. I used components, mass components. We've used those before. And so those curbs and the parking, the concrete parking here is like that. So I'm going to just put in a concrete sidewalk here, and that's what I'd like for you to add to the drawing is a concrete sidewalk. So we're just going to go in and do architecture. We're going to do a component. Oops, architecture. We want to do a model in place component. And we're going to call this or give it the category of site. So it'll be a site element. So if we hide by category, this will hide with it, right? And so we're going to do that. And then we're going to call this, uh, you know, we'll give it a front sidewalk instead of just sidewalk. Okay. And and then what we're going to do is do extrusion. And then we need to set, so it's the work plane right now is set to first finish level. We can change that work plane. It should be the same height as the curb right here. So I'm going to set um, the work plane to the top of curb instead of to the first finish level. So I'm going to say, okay, that should change to the top of curve. And then the extrusion for that is going to be from the top of the curve, which is a minus 1 foot 6 inches, because I put the levels in, so I know where the top of curve starts. And oh, I take that back. That's the top of street. Top of curve is 1 foot. So the extrusion we want to end, we want it to end at, I'm sorry, at 1 foot. And then we want it to go down to 1 foot 4 inches. So I'm going to put 1 foot 4 inches. Okay. So it's going to start at 1 foot and then extrude downwards 1 foot 4 inches. So I'm going to apply that. It's going to be a concrete material, so that material's already been set. And so let's just draw a few lines now. So I'm just going to use my pick a line tool. So I'm going to pick that line and then lock it so that if I move the curb, the sidewalk will move with it. Oops, I didn't lock that one. There's nothing to lock it to anyway. Uh, we'll lock that one and lock that one, and yeah, we'll lock that one too. And then we got to make sure they're all trimmed off equal to each other, because you notice right here, these aren't trimmed. So it'll give me an error statement saying you can't close uh, the geometry, and you'll see that this is not trimmed either. These should be. Sometimes I just go through and test it. In other words, trim it anyway, just in case. And so now I've got it all trimmed, and I'm going to say, I think, okay to this. Um, whoops. It evidently is below the, right now it must be below the landscape. Okay, so I'm going to need to raise it in some way, I guess. Oh no, I haven't finished the model yet. Let me finish the model, see what happens here. Yeah, it's evidently below the landscape, so I must have been wrong on my dimensions. Let's just move this over, this section over, and let me see where it went to. It's always good to have some mistakes like this so that you can see how you fix them if you've got them. Okay, so here it is. There's my sidewalk right there. Okay, and it should have been set at top of curve. Oh, I see. I put minus 1 foot and it should have been 0 because it's relative to the curb. Okay, so this is going to be really easy to solve because I believe all I have to do is select that, and then we're going to do a move command and see if I can't move it up here to where it's even with the curve, and I can't, so that means I'm going to have to re-extrude it. Okay, so let's go back to my site view here. Okay, and I'll select, oh, I've already got it selected. I'm going to edit it in place, and we'll select it again. See if I can't. There we are, right there. And actually, this should be 0 because it's going to start at the top, or going to end the extrusion at the top of the curve. So this should be 0. And this should be 0. That should be the minus 4 inches because that's how deep I want the, whoops, I got a double inch in there, so it didn't like that. It thought it was a formula that it couldn't apply. And now with that done, if we go back and finish it, voila, now we have our concrete. So that's how these were all extruded. They were all drawn, the offsets, all kinds of things, and then extruded in the same way. Now the next thing I'm going to do in this video, the last thing I'm going to do in this video before we get into modeling, is establish my structural construction lines. Okay, and what I'm going to do there is for right now, I'm going to set them to the outside boundary of this, okay, because that's where my slab is going to go. So since my slab's going to go there, I'm going to go architecture and I'm going to go to grid. Okay. And since I don't have any interior columns or anything that I'm going to use, since I'm going to span from one bearing wall to the other, I'm just going to draw this and draw this. Okay. We'll fix them up in here in just a second. So there's my two grid lines there going in this direction, 1 and 2. Okay, we'll line that up. And then I'll do the same thing for my vertical. And once again, if I use 1 and 2 here, I should use A and B in the other direction. So I'm just going to go back to my grid and change that to A. And change this to B. Now in the site plan, I'm going to turn this off. Turn the grid off. I'm probably not going to have it in the site plan. So right now that it's kind of not, those tags are not in the right location, I'm not going to worry about it right now. If I can get a hold of this end, pull this down some. There we go. Okay. But now I've got my grid and I'm ready to start doing my structure. So in the next videos, we're going to do our structure.